Yeah.
Well, isn't it possible also though to to lean into that spiritual connection and love that feeling that you have in that spiritual connection so much that you just want to lean into that and leave the physical behind? So could that be a part of it too?
It could, absolutely, especially if you recognize the love energy that's coming from your spiritual side. And it's so much more fun and warm and cozy compared to sometimes the coldness of the worldly problems and the worldly issues.
Welcome to Living God's Light, a podcast to help you strengthen your spirituality and your connection with God. We are so happy to have you as a part of the Living God's Light family.
My wife and our anniversary was yesterday, and we didn't even realize it till my brother sent us a text.
Oh my gosh, that's but that isn't that true love that you can both forget and be like,
Yeah, well, and it's not like so being in the military, we kind of fell out of, and I honestly don't understand. People are like, okay, this is the day we have to celebrate on the day. In the military, it was we'll celebrate plus or minus 2 weeks unless you're deployed, and then it's plus or minus 2 months. I mean,
yeah,
just celebrate. The day itself has no special
Yeah.
significance. We just spent a whole week-long vacation for our anniversary. So
yeah,
big deal.
welcome back.
Yeah,
Yeah. That
How was
celebration
it?
happened.
yeah. It was great.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was an experiment. So with the seasonal depression, which I think we talked about previously, figured we're going to try an experiment and see if getting farther south and more sun and more warmth and doing some fun stuff, if it helped. It was a
okay,
big
report back.
experiment, and I love science. What's that?
Report back. How was it?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, experiment successful. Science is awesome.
What do they call
So,
that? Seasonal affective disorder or SAD?
yeah,
Like
I've
that's a
never
real
been.
thing. Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
real.
it is. I've never been diagnosed, but over the years, we've noticed it's a thing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, sometimes it gets pretty bad, which actually kind of ties into what we're talking about today. Somebody, so we do listen. And by the way, I want to mention at the beginning before anybody drops off, if you are not yet signed up to get our emails, we've been dripping out pieces of the workbook. So you can kind of see what to expect with that. So if you go to livinggodslight.org and sign up for the emails once a week, we've been dripping that out. So go there, sign up. We'd love to keep in touch with you that way. But one of the messages we got has to do with being world weary, which I love that way of putting it. It's very descriptive. When you kind of get tired of life, dissatisfied. The way I put it is the game's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like we have to realize there's 2/3 elements to us. There's our soul, our spirit, there's our physical body. And what's happening when we get this world weary is we're allowing too much of the physical aspect of our existence to overcome our mind. Our mind, our consciousness is that third part to us. And the mind is kind of this slide rule, and it goes up and down, back and forth between higher self spirit and lower self body. And when we're spending too much time in that lower place, that's where we get so weary for the world.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, isn't it possible also though to lean into that spiritual connection and love that feeling that you have in that spiritual connection so much that you just want to lean into that and leave the physical behind? So could that be a part of it too?
It could, absolutely, especially if you recognize the love energy that's coming from your spiritual side. And it's so much more fun and warm and cozy compared to sometimes the coldness of the worldly problems and the worldly issues. What's amazing to me is when we have a question come before us, the first thing that pops into our head is typically intuition, which is going to be that higher self. But the next 5 things are typically the lower body essences like ego, self-protection, worry, that kind of thing, right? Now, when something scary happens in the world, it's the exact opposite. So when you're out and about, there's some kind of weird stuff out in the air that you're reading about, probably some of you. And when those things are happening, the first instinct that people have, most people, are going into these fear instincts. And it takes a few thoughts later where the soul starts coming in and speaking and saying, now back on up. Everything's fine. It's just some things. And so like we have this option every day to realize where we're processing our experiences, our thoughts, and our energy. We have that ability to see, observe, number one, where we're receiving this. If it's out of instinct, if it's out of reaction, then typically that first impulse is not necessarily a good one. Whereas, yeah.
So when you got back from your experience, so I remember you talked about this a little bit in the book about how you wanted to go back. And that wasn't a result of leaning into physical. That was because the spiritual aspect was so fresh. So what made you decide that it was worth sticking around?
Andrea, my wife, she was the primary thing, but she was really kind of a fast forward into what my future would be if I would allow my creator to lead me instead of my ego, instead of my mind. And yes, I wanted to go home. I had this very weird sense when I was in the hospital waking up that I needed to get home. And what's so weird, when I got home, I still felt it though. And I thought for sure it must be my apartment, because I was living in a weird circumstance where I had a home, but I also had an apartment. And when that happened, when my experience happened, and so I thought, well, maybe it's my apartment. So I went over there and I still felt it. So I wasn't satisfying that need to go home. And then, of course, when I had my memory come of my whole experience, I knew for sure what it was, that I wanted to go to that home. And that is something that you get with people that are suffering with Alzheimer's, with dementia. They will have this yearning to go home, and they'll be in their home, a home that they've lived in for 30, 40 years. And you'll see them packing a bag even, acting like they're going to go, home.
Yeah. Lynn, without giving away too many details of who asked that question, I'm just curious kind of what caused that feeling for them, and if it's something that maybe I can relate to.
Well, they mentioned that it was they recently lost somebody significant in their life. And then there were some religious teachings they weren't really sure about. And then as they've been looking into death and the afterlife, and then having the loss of the loved one made it worse. And it's just, becomes a challenge. And I can, not that I've lost loved ones over the years. Haven't lost a spouse, but it'll happen to one of us eventually. But loss it's a familiar thing, and there's different scales. But excuse me, I was, and many times we compare our grief to other people, thinking it shouldn't be that bad. But I learned a lesson from somebody within the last few years, a counselor who the same day dealt with a woman who the woman came in and was just distraught because the SUV that they delivered was the wrong color. And then that same day, somebody else was distraught because their spouse had cancer and was dying. And we're generally conditioned in society to think like, okay, the person about the SUV should not be feeling that bad about it. But this person taught me, this counselor taught me that grief is grief, and we need to honor whatever that grief is. And everybody feels grief differently. and it's all real, and you shouldn't discount it. So whatever is driving that world weariness, whether it's world events or a personal experience or personal trials that you've got, chronic illness, whatever it is, whatever you're experiencing is real, and it can wear on you. I mean, I've been in a position where I wanted to just end it all. And I'm glad I didn't, but something that Vinney,
I'm glad you
I learned this
didn't
from
either.
Vinney. Sorry, go ahead. What's that?
I'm glad you didn't either.
Yeah, me too. So something that I learned from Vinney is the way to look at this life, especially in the sense that this is a classroom, not a courtroom, that you're here to learn and to grow. And since your existence here on earth is one little grain of sand on an infinitely long ribbon, you want to get as much out of this experience as you can. And so hang in there as long as you can and just trust that everything that you do and everything that you learn is going to benefit you on the backside.
Yeah.
It's more that you're going to learn, because when you get to the other side, all of that pain and all that angst is going to get washed away. And you're just going to have the experiences. So hang in there. And the other thing I found, that if you are really having a bad time, look for ways to serve others.
Yeah. There's a golden lining to our pain. And that is, we now recognize the loss of something, and that causes the pain. But here's the beauty of it. The fact that it's gone lets you know how important it is. And there's a beautiful aspect to that. And how amazing it will be to have the return of home, whether it be spouse or the way things were once for you. And that sense is something that the soul needs. That's something that the soul will get if it does endure a bit.
Yeah.
I love that when we get to the other side, I saw that parents who lost children, they get to go in one of those pearl type structures too, but in a loving way, not like a protection way, but a loving way, to live out everything they felt they were missing. And that way it removes the victim off of them as well, because survivors are victims just as much as victims are victims.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like the universe is built out of so much love for us that we get the very prescription for our soul. The very thing that we need, we get to have.
Yeah. And that's after we go. But I would also say that if we're open to it, it's while we're here too, right?
Yes.
We get exactly what we need. I'm sitting here relating so closely to this question because in my experience, I've talked to my husband about this. So we are both on the same page of opening up about kind of the struggles that we've experienced in our marriage. And a big one is sex addiction was live and well in our marriage for a long time. And I did not understand how it was playing a part. I was so blind, and we were just living our life, but I had so many pains during the time. It was 10 years. This was 10 years that we didn't understand that this was going on. And we knew that pornography was a problem, but we didn't understand how heavy the burden we were carrying. We didn't understand what it was really doing to us. And when it all kind of came to a head, and we realized this is affecting, well, we accepted that it was a reality that we have been dealing with our whole marriage, but also that it's affecting our kids, and we had to make a change. And then I started going to therapy and I started sorting stuff out, and that digging through my own ickiness. I want to say other words, but I'll keep it clean. Digging through my own stuff was so painful. It was so painful to look at it and go, I was part of the problem. I did not cause it, and I was a victim, and I had to also accept that I was a victim, but I was part of it. And looking at my childhood and how that played a part. And I can relate so deeply to that world weariness of going, why am I dealing with all this? Why? This sucks.
Yeah.
It was so, so painful. And then the most miraculous thing happened. I found your story, Vinney. It was literally like at this crescendo that I was starting to really sort stuff out. And I receive your story. And also about the same time, I was sorting through, how do I sort through, I'm so angry we've had sex addiction in our marriage, and I'm so angry I haven't been treating myself well, and I'm so angry that all these things led to this. And I was asking God, like, what do I do with this? And it was like this light turned on within me to find gratitude in it.
Mm-hmm.
And everything changed. I can't even express enough like how it changed. That pain did not go away, but I was able to, you hear people say alchemize things. Well, I didn't even know what that meant, but I literally turned that pain into beauty by then becoming a mentor of women's groups for sex addicts' wives. And it's a grief group. That's what it is. It is a grief group where we sit together, we talk about our pains, and we honor that we are worth being loved. And it has given me so much purpose, to do that. And it's to watch another woman find her worth and realize that her pains do have meaning. And, find it, it goes back to that man's search for meaning. I did read the book, and to find purpose in your suffering is incredibly powerful. It's so powerful. So I also want to just honor the world weariness of that question that we received. And I am so sorry for the loss that you've experienced, because I've had loss close to me in my family, not a spouse either, but very close, and it's painful. And I see you in your pains. So thanks for letting me share that. I hope that we can, discuss that. I can openly more discuss about the sex addiction in our relationship, maybe not specifically, into dirty details at all, but how addiction has affected us, and because I know a lot of people are suffering with it, statistics show.
I've got
So,
two questions for you, Alyssa. The first one is, you said you, forget the exact words, but you talk about gratitude, where
yeah.
everything shifted when you found gratitude in that. What exactly was the gratitude for? What were you grateful for in that? Because that might be hard for people to find as, okay, I'm supposed to be grateful, but for what? Because it
Yeah.
hurts.
It hurt. And I honor that it hurts. Like, I really do. It was so painful. And I was like pleading with, I just have this way that every conversation in my head is not just a conversation with me, but it's like this connection. I feel like I'm always talking to God, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I just feel like I am.
It's a good place to be.
And yeah, it's really cool. And I understand it now that why I do it. But I was pleading, like, help me understand, because this anger feels icky. I don't like this feeling. And it was just like a light, like, find gratitude in it. And it was like a switch in me. Like, you mean I can be grateful that we've had sex addiction in our marriage? And then I started like looking down that path, what that could look like. And I also was like, you mean I can find gratitude in the fact that I didn't know my self-worth for basically 30 years of my life. And I started seeing that path, and that it led towards understanding people that don't have that knowledge yet and empathizing with them. It's like my empathy just expanded way bigger than I ever knew was possible, because I chose to look at that silver lining and choose to feel the gratitude rather than sit in the ick.
Mhm. So it sounds like you saw the lesson in the pain, and
Yeah.
that gave you wisdom and experience that you could then use to help others through their pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it rears its ugly head. When you have 10 years of trauma, it rears its ugly head and makes me go sometimes like, oh my gosh, I remember this. And it's like I have a choice. Like it's like I'm like this little pendulum, and I have a choice to go back to feeling the ick, being stuck in the crap, or
Well,
choosing
it's
the
like it becomes a daily decision,
every day.
or married many times a day. Several years ago, I was involved in a project. I won't get into the details, but it ended very poorly. I felt wronged. I felt betrayed, and it very easily could have spilled. I mean, and it was something I had poured my entire life into. I had left previous employment, and now I was unemployed with not a great time to be looking for a job. And my family could have felt the effects. I mean, I could have been miserable and angry and bitter, but every day I had to make the decision that today I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be optimistic. And it took 3 months before a new opportunity came around. But and we get into that, the power of creation there, even though it took 3 months to make it a reality. But looking back, my family did not experience that pain with me because I chose to take that different path. And so, even though it was a very painful time for me, and my wife knew that I was going through a painful struggle, but I made that choice every day to forgive and to be optimistic. And even now, I mean, it's been 15, 20 years. And it's still a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the greatest things and the hardest things is to learn to love what is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard one for a lot of us that are going through hard times. But if we can learn to love what is as a respect of what's missing, in love and honor of what's missing, we bring forward much of what we're missing into our future as something that we're being fulfilled by.
Yeah. And sometimes, this is probably going to get a little bit weird. I have
You're in the right audience for that.
Yeah, that's true.
Just kidding.
I have experienced gratitude, like gratitude in the moment. I've experienced gratitude for things that I don't have yet.
Yeah.
That's not weird.
They're just now coming over the horizon. But I mean, there was one day I woke up and I was like, I am enjoying this experience as if it's already here. And it was wonderful. I rode that wave for a few days. So I know that's possible to do.
Mm-hmm.
Alyssa, the second question I had for you is, you said that right when the crescendo of this was happening, that's when you found Vinney's story about his experience. What was it specifically about his experience that it flipped that switch for you, that made the difference?
So, 2 parts. Well, there's a lot of parts. There's a ton, but 2 parts that I'll touch on right now. At the time, because I was in therapy, I had learned this concept by Gabor Mate, which is incredibly powerful: authenticity versus attachment. And if you're interested, we can link in the show notes for, kind of what that concept is and how he explains it, because he explains it really, really well. So I was learning this authenticity versus attachment. And when we choose to attach to people and we give up our own self, it can be detrimental to us. And I was dealing with health problems, and, there were so many things I was dealing with. And I could see how I was giving away myself, my authenticity, by choosing attachment to people, especially my husband. I was looking for validation from him in all places. So I get the story, I get the book, and the first principle was authenticity. And it was like the spotlight of what you're learning is right, and you need to pay attention. So it was so cool. And I just felt so seen by God. I remember sitting at the counter where I was reading the book and just bawling because I felt so seen by God. And another part is that when I was reading it, it felt like my soul knew the story. I knew before Vinney, before he came back into his body, that he was going to feel claustrophobic and painful. I already knew that. Mm-hmm. And I knew that desire to just go back home, like these were just like those inklings in my soul that was like, I know that. But why do I know that? There's nothing in my life. I haven't experienced it at NDE, but it was just like this knowing within me. And it was just so cool. And I felt so seen. And then I took the book to group, and then multiple women were like, oh my gosh, this is helping me in my story. This is helping me with what I'm going through. It was so cool. There is one thing that keeps coming to my heart that I just want to share is if somebody is dealing with grief, sometimes we isolate ourselves because it feels too painful. Mm-hmm. And to even leave your house feels painful. To sit with somebody else who might be experiencing a different kind of pain or the same pain feels too painful. But from what I have experienced, leaning in to connection with people, finding support, to recognize that you are not alone in your story, that there are other people going through exactly what you're going through, can be the best healing experience. And you will find your tribe among where your biggest pains lie. When you find those people that are willing to do the work and willing to grow and heal together, wow, you will find an incredible group of people, and they'll be your people,
I found it's pretty amazing that in life we can find our tribe in healing, or we can find our tribe in victimhood.
Yeah, that's true too.
And what's sad is the victimhood tribe never has any happy outcomes. Not one. Never. There's no settlement or adjustment or recourse that actually brings happiness to the victim tribe. But the healing tribe, miracles upon miracles upon miracles happen. It happens when, victims are created by victims. The hurt people that it doesn't just start with the victim. You have to go to the higher level of who is creating the victim and go to the higher level of who created that victim. And the solution up and down that ladder is unconditional love. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing my experience taught me, it's that unconditional love is for all of us. And what we don't realize is many addictions in our life, they stem from a lack of self-love, and that we're pouring our energy into something outside our body to try to fill up the lack of love inside our body.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's why that's why it's an addiction. We can never fill it up. We can never get that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe a good way to wrap this up is the idea that if whatever tribe, whatever activity, addiction, whatever, if love is there, you're in the right place. If love is not there, you need to move.
Yeah.
Just look to see is whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, whoever your tribe is, whatever you're reading, whatever you're watching, if love's there, God's there.
I can tell you with my own experience of coming back and feeling just devastated, suicidal, distraught, that consistent message from Drake. It's going to be really hard, but it's going to be worth it. It would get me out and doing things that I didn't want to be doing. I was actively calling people to go and get together when I didn't want to get together with anyone. I wanted to stay in my bubble and never eat again and never drink again and just let myself die. But I also had a higher knowing to that whatever price I was avoiding paying, I would eventually pay. And if that price meant going out and being uncomfortable with some friends, then I was willing to pay it. And so I did. And that's actually how my life turned around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Wow.
That was a great topic.
Yeah, it really is necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the question for sure that came in, so.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for putting in questions. We appreciate it. And we do listen. We do read. You're important to us.
Yeah. Yep.
So thank you all. Love you all. And again, if this touched your heart, if you think it helps somebody else, pass it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't forget that the greatest thing and the hardest thing is to love what is.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Love you too.
Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us on the Living God's Light podcast. You can help keep the show going through getting merch at livinggodslight.com or contributing what you think the show is worth on our website or by going through Patreon. Thank you for sharing your light with the world. You are making a difference, and we love you.